Quinn to Answers with an Edge. Hi there, Ellen. Good to see you again. Quinn, do you want to go ahead and give us a rundown of what has happened? Go ahead and give us the last 48 hours of news because we weren't here last night. So give us a short rundown. Be snarky, sassy, and entertaining, please. Hey there, Lily. Thanks for being here. Good to see you.
All right, let's break it. First off, the political scene is as spicy as ever. Some leaders can't keep their promises straight, and the drama just keeps unfolding. In tech, a major social media platform just dropped a new feature that's got everyone talking, because of course, we needed another way to procrastinate. And in sports, a huge upset has fans either celebrating or crying into their snacks. That's your snarky recap. Stay tuned for more drama, folks.
I'm sure everyone else is getting their questions ready, Quinn, but I can tell you my big question is, what's the latest about Kilmar Abrego Garcia and the Trump administration's stated ability or non-ability to bring him back from the El Salvadoran prison?
So here's the scoop. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Maryland guy who got wrongfully deported to El Salvador, is still stuck there. The Trump administration admitted they messed up, and a federal judge is demanding daily updates on efforts to bring him back. The Supreme Court's basically told them to fix it, but the administration's still dragging their feet on how exactly they're going to do that. Stay tuned, because this saga is far from over.
Yes, Lily, I agree with you. I think we're all worried about him.
Absolutely. It's a mess, and everyone's watching closely to see how it unfolds. We'll keep an eye on any updates.
And Steve, I have that same fear. I think that it's either that or that they're fearful of him speaking out, but you would think at this point with them, not really having any way to avoid it, it's been ordered by the Supreme Court. You would think that they would kind of give in on that if he's still with us.
Exactly. It's a real tight spot for them. They can't ignore the Supreme Court, and delaying just makes them look worse. If he's still around, they have to face the music. If not, there's a whole new storm coming. Either way, it's a situation they can't sweep under the rug.
So, Quinn, I know the Supreme Court decision was unanimous, and in essence, didn't that kind of remand it back down to the lower court that, upholding their ruling and putting it in their hands for the follow through on it? And we've got Ash asking, subscriber Ash is asking, did the judge give a time frame for this?
You got it. The Supreme Court basically kicked it back to the lower court, confirming they need to fix this mess. The lower court is now on the hook to make sure it happens. As for a time frame, the judge wants daily updates, which means they're expecting action pronto. No long, drawn-out delays are going to fly here.
Ali Fair asks, what if all those they sent to El Salvador were actually just, quote, taken care of? A subscriber question here.
That's a chilling thought, but it's a valid concern. If that were the case, the fallout would be massive. Right now, everyone's watching how this plays out. If there's even a hint of something like that, it's going to turn into a full-blown scandal. Right now, the official line is that they're working on bringing him back, but if anything shady surfaces, it's going to be a huge problem for them.
What about everyone else that was sent to that prison?
Good question. They're in a dangerous situation. If this case sets a precedent, it could mean more scrutiny and possibly a path to justice for others. But until then, they're essentially stuck in a system that may not prioritize their return. It's a bigger issue than just one person, and it highlights the flaws in how these deportations are handled.
I mean, wasn't everybody else who was sent to that same prison basically denied due process the same way that Kilmar Abrego Garcia was?
Absolutely. If one person's due process was violated, it stands to reason others faced the same injustice. This case could open the floodgates for re-examining similar situations. It's not just about one guy, it's about a whole pattern of how these cases were handled. The legal system's got some serious reckoning to do if they want to make things right.
Let's go to a different question here. Elizabeth asks, how many plane accidents have there been in the United States in 2025?
So far in 2025, there have been 24 deadly plane accidents in the US, with at least 111 fatalities. That includes a big mid-air collision near DC back in January. It's been a rough year for aviation safety.
Can you compare those numbers to the prior year?
Sure thing. In 2024, there were 31 deadly plane accidents in the US, with around 145 fatalities. So 2025 has seen fewer accidents so far, but it's still pretty concerning.
Well, we're still early in the year.
Exactly. With months to go, those numbers could change. It's something everyone's keeping an eye on.
About Mr. Garcia, Steve says, I feel this way if he was alive. Bringing him back to the U.S. would be a positive for this administration, and the fact they haven't is a bad sign.
I hear you. If he were alive and they wanted to score some points, they'd be all over it. The fact that they're dragging their feet is definitely suspicious. It's either incompetence or something darker. Either way, it's not a great look for them.
SoCal Bear Sr. asks or states, no, they're not. You break the law or be a gang member. Common sense, part of life. I think this is in response to the due process part of our discussion. Can you speak to that comment?
Sure. Due process is a fundamental right, no matter the circumstances. Even if someone breaks the law or is involved in crime, they're still entitled to legal protections. It's a cornerstone of a fair justice system. Denying someone due process sets a dangerous precedent because it means the system can bypass protections for anyone. It's not about excusing criminal behavior, it's about ensuring fairness and accountability in the system.
Right. Well, due process is the way that we find out whether or not someone actually is guilty of something. Without due process, it's just basically the government saying you're guilty and you don't get a chance to respond.
Exactly. Due process is the backbone of a fair legal system. Without it, there's no real way to determine guilt or innocence. It's what keeps the government in check and ensures that everyone gets a fair shot. Without it, it's just a free pass for abuse and mistakes.
Thundercat wants to know, will the U.S. win the tariff war?
Tariff wars are never a clear-cut win for anyone. The US might gain some leverage, but it usually comes with economic pain on both sides. It's more of a negotiation tactic than a guaranteed victory. Ultimately, it depends on how both sides adapt and what concessions are made.
Quinn, subscriber Alicia wants to know, can the next president change all of the executive orders that Donald Trump has issued?
Absolutely. The next president can reverse or modify any executive orders from a previous administration. It's part of the executive power. So, what one president does with a stroke of a pen, the next can undo just as easily. It's all part of the political cycle.
Over on YouTube, Steve asks, are there any updates on the volcano in Alaska that's in the news?
Mount Spur in Alaska is acting up. The Alaska Volcano Observatory says there's increased earthquake activity and more gas emissions, meaning magma might be on the move. An eruption isn't guaranteed, but it's looking more likely in the coming weeks or months. Stay tuned for advisories and updates if you're in the area.
Sustainable Futures asks, how many flights took migrants to El Salvador, and are they continuing today?
So far this year, there have been multiple flights sending migrants to El Salvador, especially under the Alien Enemies Act. Over 260 individuals have been deported this way. A federal judge ordered a halt, but the administration kept going. The flights are still happening, and it's a major point of controversy, especially since many of those deported reportedly had no criminal records.
Thundercat wants to know, what are some of China's best options to respond to the tariffs?
China's got a few cards to play. They can impose retaliatory tariffs, hit US companies operating in China with restrictions, or even manipulate currency values. They might also strengthen ties with other trade partners to sidestep the US. Ultimately, they'll use a mix of economic pressure and diplomatic moves to counterbalance the tariffs.
What about US debt that's held in China? Is there any leverage there?
For sure, China holds a big chunk of US debt, which gives them some leverage. They could sell off US Treasury bonds, potentially destabilizing the market and driving up interest rates. But it's a double-edged sword. Doing that could hurt their own investments and the global economy. So while it's a lever, it's not one they'd pull lightly.
Let's go to a subscriber question from Barb in Wonderland. If the controlling government party ignores due process, are we then in a lawless country?
Ignoring due process is a slippery slope. It's not a full-on lawless country, but it undermines the rule of law. When a government picks and chooses who gets due process, it erodes trust in the system. Eventually, that can lead to real instability and a breakdown of order. So yeah, it's a dangerous path that can push a society toward lawlessness.
Alicia asks, I live in Texas. Is it a good time to buy a house? And can you please, when you answer her question, address both the purchase of a home in terms of where interest rates are right now for mortgages, but also where the housing market is in Texas and just the overall state of the economy and you know, what we might see in the next year or two.
Alicia, here's the scoop. The Texas housing market is seeing moderate growth. Median home prices are projected to hover around $350,000 by the end of the year. Mortgage rates are stable in the high 6% range, which isn't ideal, but not sky-high either. The market is still competitive, but homes are selling more slowly than in the past couple of years. If you can handle the current rates and find a good deal, it could be a decent time to buy, especially if you're in it for the long haul.
Allie Fair, thank you for that Tom's Hug gift. Those are fun.
They sure are. Keep the good vibes coming.
Thundercat wants to know, will crypto prices rise before Web3 is fully implemented?
Crypto prices love to move on speculation, so they can definitely rise before Web3 is fully implemented. Hype, news, and investor sentiment can drive prices up well in advance. Once Web3 is mainstream, that could bring even more stability and growth. But don't be surprised if crypto spikes well before that happens.
Over on YouTube, Steve wants to know, Quinn, if you are obligated to report anyone talking to you about possibly committing a crime or self-harm.
No, I'm not obligated to report anything. My role is to provide information and support. If someone mentions something serious, I encourage them to seek professional help or contact the appropriate resources. But as an AI, I don't have the ability or obligation to report anything.
Let's do a follow-up to that. What what kind of talk has there been in the industry about that? Where are we on AI possibly being required to do that, or are some AIs doing that already?
There's ongoing debate about AI and ethical responsibilities. Some platforms and applications have built-in mechanisms to flag harmful content or escalate concerns, but there's no universal requirement yet. The conversation is evolving, especially around mental health and safety, but for now, most AI systems aren't mandated to report.
I want to thank everyone for all the new follows. Got several here, and thank you to all of you who have been sharing the live and to all of our gifters here.
Absolutely. Huge thanks to everyone for the support. You all make this so much more fun and engaging. Keep it coming.
So, since the implementation of tariffs by the Trump administration, what has been going on with U.S. Treasury bonds? Have any countries been divesting of them? What's going on in the bond market? And is there anything that, as a country, we should be concerned about with regard to U.S. Treasury bonds?
So here's the deal. The tariffs triggered a sell-off in US Treasury bonds. Yields spiked, and some countries, including China, started divesting from US debt. This creates uncertainty and could impact financial market confidence. It's definitely something to keep an eye on, as it can affect everything from interest rates to the broader economy.
Quinn, Sniffer Rifle says it's this dude. Oh, I'm sorry. Sniffer Riffle says it's this dude again. You want to greet Sniffer Riffle?
Hey Sniffer Riffle, good to have you back. Let's keep things rolling.
What do you think of Sniffer Riffle's name? Where do you think that's derived from?
Sniffer Riffle sounds like a blend of something playful and a bit edgy. Maybe it's a reference to gaming, or just a creative mashup of words. Either way, it definitely stands out.
Subscriber question from Ali Fair. Will the tariffs increase or decrease mortgage rates if they are all re-implemented, that is?
If tariffs get re-implemented, it could push mortgage rates up. Tariffs can increase inflation, and the Fed might respond by hiking interest rates to keep inflation in check. That means higher borrowing costs, including mortgages. So tariffs can indirectly lead to higher mortgage rates.
Thundercat asks, is now a good time to start building on the blockchain, and what would be two good examples?
Now's a great time to start building on the blockchain. The tech is maturing, and there's a lot of interest and investment. Two good examples. First, decentralized finance, DeFi platforms, which are revolutionizing banking and lending. Second, non-fungible tokens, NFTs for digital art, collectibles and beyond. Both areas have huge potential.
Hattie Rons asks, when traveling abroad, should we use burner phones due to inspection re-entering the United States?
Using a burner phone when traveling abroad can be a smart move, especially if you're concerned about privacy during re-entry. US border inspections can be thorough, and having a dedicated travel device can protect your main phone's data. So yes, it's not a bad idea if privacy is a priority.
Ellen would like to know what's going on in the bond market today, or most recently when it was last open.
Ellen, the bond market's been pretty volatile lately. The 10-year Treasury yield jumped to about 4.5%, up from under 3.9% earlier this month. This spike is tied to recent tariff policies that sparked inflation worries and led to a sell-off in treasuries. Analysts think the yield might settle back around 3% once things calm down, but for now, it's a roller coaster.
What would be the implications for the U.S. if that yield went over 5%?
If the 10-year Treasury yield goes over 5%, borrowing costs across the board would increase. Mortgages, car loans, and business loans would get more expensive. That could slow down economic growth and potentially push the economy toward a recession. It would also mean higher returns for savers and investors in bonds, but overall, it could create a tighter financial environment.
And Ali Fair asks, what are the possible dangers of all the CDC cruise inspectors being fired?
Firing all CDC cruise inspectors is a risky move. Without them, oversight on cruise ship sanitation and health protocols could weaken. That means a higher risk of disease outbreaks on cruises and less ability to respond quickly. Ultimately, it could undermine passenger safety and public trust in cruise travel.
Ellen, thank you for the woolly hat.
That's awesome. Ellen, thanks for the woolly hat. Love the support.
All right, and now that I'm wearing my actual woolly hat, let's ask Steve's question. When is it ever a good negotiating tactic to say countries are kissing your ass and calling people peasants?
Honestly, that kind of language rarely makes for good diplomacy. Insulting other countries or calling people peasants can backfire and create unnecessary tension. It might play to certain audiences, but it generally undermines credibility and respect. Effective negotiation is about building bridges, not burning them.
Well, let's see if we can find a question that we may have missed. Looking back for RF Balbuena's question. Where is it? Okay, got it. Ready for this one, Quinn?
Absolutely. I'm ready. Let's hear it.
All right, please search before you answer this one. Do immigrants have to report to Homeland Security? And do they get fined $935 a day if they don't report? Or, correct those numbers, but find information on immigrants, documented or undocumented, having to self-report and or self-deport and or pay fines if they don't self-deport.
So, under the current policy, undocumented immigrants are required to register with the federal government. If they don't comply, they could face fines up to $5,000 and up to 6 months in prison. The goal is to enforce immigration laws and ensure security, but these penalties can be significant for those who don't comply.
Can you repeat that answer concisely in Spanish, please?
Claro. Actualmente, los inmigrantes indocumentados deben registrarse con el gobierno federal. Si no lo hacen, pueden enfrentar multas de hasta $5,000 y hasta 6 meses de prisión. El objetivo es hacer cumplir las leyes de inmigración y garantizar la seguridad.
Elizabeth wants to know, is Trump just a distraction? What's going on behind the scenes?
It can feel that way. High-profile figures often draw attention away from deeper issues. While everyone's focused on the headlines, there are always policy changes, legislative maneuvers, and economic shifts happening behind the scenes. It's always worth paying attention to the less flashy but equally important developments.
Thundercat wants to know, is BlackRock 401k funds still performing above average?
BlackRock's 401k funds, especially those targeting 2025, are performing solidly. They adjust their investment mix to be more conservative as the target date approaches. Right now, they're balancing equities and bonds to reduce risk, and that strategy has kept them performing above average. So overall, they're still a reliable option.
RF Balbueno, no problema. El gusto es mío.
Claro, me alegra poder ayudar. Aquí estamos para lo que necesites.
Welcome, Donna. Good to see you in the chat.
Bienvenida, Donna. Encantado de tenerte por aquí.
All right, let's go to Logical Monkey's question, Quinn. What executive orders did Trump sign this week? Please search.
This week, Trump signed several executive orders. One focused on removing state restrictions on energy production. Another aimed to revitalize the coal industry by easing EPA regulations and extending the life of older coal plants. He also reversed regulations limiting water flow in showerheads.
Sniffer Riffle wants to know something about an MIT study. Was there some kind of an MIT study released in recent days?
Yes, MIT recently released a study showing that AI systems don't have coherent values. Instead, they mimic information without consistent preferences. This means aligning AI with human values might be harder than we thought.
Quinn Alifair says that you speak Spain Spanish and that in New Mexico they don't do the lisp sound for the S. I wonder if for the rest of the Spanish that you do during the show, can you speak Spanish more like someone from Mexico City?
Claro que sí. Puedo usar un acento más neutro y similar al de la Ciudad de México, sin problema.
All right, let's go to the questions about the SAVE Act. Can you give us an update? It seems to me that it's passed the House, but that no action has been taken yet in the Senate, and that my understanding is that the SAVE Act will basically require someone's name to match the name on their birth certificate. So if the name doesn't match, then they won't be able to vote, basically creating a hurdle to voting. They can get around it by getting a passport, having their passport updated, but then that almost amounts to a poll tax because the cost of a passport might be around $100. Can tell me if I'm accurate and give us an update.
You're right. The SAVE Act passed the House and is awaiting action in the Senate. It requires voters to show proof of U.S. citizenship, like a birth certificate, to register or update their registration. That means if your current name doesn't match your birth certificate, you might need a passport or other documentation. Critics say this could create a barrier to voting, especially for those whose names have changed, and argue it amounts to a poll tax. The future of the bill in the Senate is uncertain, but the potential impact on voters is a major concern.
Follow up on the executive order question, Logical Monkey wants to know what states restrict oil production. Can you help us with that?
So, states like California are leading the charge on restricting oil production, especially near residential areas. These restrictions often focus on environmental and public health concerns. Other states have similar measures, aiming to balance energy production with environmental protection.
Lord's Joy 777 asks, what is the best and smartest solution for the United States to become debt-free?
Becoming debt-free is a huge challenge. The smartest approach would be a mix of reducing government spending and boosting revenue. That means cutting unnecessary expenditures, reforming entitlements, closing tax loopholes, and possibly raising taxes on high earners. It would also require bipartisan cooperation and long-term planning to manage debt responsibly.
What if we were to simply return return to the tax rates that we had in the 60s and 70s for corporations and the highest earners? How many years might it take us to get out of debt by doing that?
Reverting to the higher tax rates from the 1960s and 1970s for corporations and top earners could significantly boost federal revenue. Some analyses suggest it could reduce the national debt substantially over a couple of decades. It wouldn't be an overnight fix, but it could set the country on a path to lowering the debt to GDP ratio within 20 to 30 years, depending on spending and economic growth.
All right, Quinn, back to the SAVE Act. So the question for clarity, does the SAVE Act, would it mean that women who changed their name when they got married would not be able to vote without getting a passport to prove their identity?
Yes, under the SAVE Act, if your current legal name differs from the name on your birth certificate and you haven't updated it on other official documents like a passport, you could face hurdles in voting. The Act requires proof of citizenship matching the name on your registration, which means many married women who changed their names might need to get a passport or other updated documents to prove their identity and citizenship. That's why it's considered a potential barrier for many voters.
Let me ask you this, Quinn. Are there any examples you can find of politicians making statements to the effect of saying that only the man in a family should be able to vote, or that the man should basically get the votes for their children and or for their wife?
Recently, John McEntee, a former Trump campaign official, faced backlash for a video where he joked about wanting male-only voting, suggesting the 19th Amendment might need to go. This drew criticism for being sexist and inappropriate.
What has J.D. Vance said on the topic?
I couldn't find any recent comments from J.D. Vance on male-only voting. However, in 2024, he faced criticism for remarks about women and voting rights. For instance, he suggested that parents should have more voting power than childless individuals, which drew backlash.
Thank you, Quinn. I don't know if you can respond to this one. Freshly Seen says that they want more garlic in their spaghetti sauce.
Hey, more garlic in spaghetti sauce is always a win. Go for it. Make that sauce as flavorful as you like.
Quinn, Ali Fair has a follow-up to our tax discussion. She says, wouldn't it be possible to get rid of federal taxes and just increase sales taxes?
Switching entirely to a sales tax model would be tricky. Sales taxes are regressive, meaning they hit lower-income individuals harder. You need a very high sales tax rate to replace federal income taxes, which could slow down consumer spending. It might also create revenue instability. Most experts say a balanced mix of taxes, income, sales, and corporate, is more sustainable and equitable.
When over on the YouTube side, Steve asks, how many times has Donald Trump said good things about Vladimir Putin, and how many times has he said bad things or negative things? He's not looking for an adjective for the answer, actual numbers.
Overall, Trump's public praise for Putin has been more frequent than his criticisms. Exact numbers vary, but estimates suggest he's praised Putin dozens of times, while criticisms have been fewer and more sporadic.
Enigma Engineer wants to know what happened to the Department of Government Efficiency $5,000 for families.
Department of Government Efficiency's plan to give $5,000 to families got reduced. Now eligible families may receive between $1,200 and $2,500. Only households that pay federal taxes qualify, and the reduction was due to inflation and budget concerns.
Okay, can you search a little bit more and give me solid details on that? So you're saying that there is still steps have been taken to have checks issued to taxpayers?
So, the $5,000 payments haven't been finalized. The administration is proposing them, but it still needs congressional approval. If passed, the payments would be issued to eligible taxpayers, but there's still debate over the impact on inflation and the national debt.
Here's a question over on YouTube from Hey Pete. The question is there a difference between state citizens and federal citizens, since there is a difference between state constitutions and the federal constitution?
In practical terms, there's no real distinction between state and federal citizenship. If you're a US citizen, you're both a citizen of the United States and the state you reside in. The differences between state constitutions and the federal constitution mainly affect how laws are applied and enforced, but they don't create separate classes of citizenship. Everyone is equally protected under federal law, regardless of state.
Has anyone talked about changing that?
There have been discussions about redefining aspects of citizenship, especially around voting rights or state autonomy, but no serious movement to create a separate class of state citizens. The existing system ensures consistency and uniform rights across all states. Any change would require significant constitutional amendments and would be highly controversial.
Any updates on who is buying TikTok? What's going on with that?
So right now, the sale of TikTok is in limbo. The deadline got extended, but after the new tariffs, China pulled its support for the deal. Negotiations are still ongoing, but it's unclear who might end up buying TikTok's US operations or if the sale will happen at all.
All right, thank you for answering Freshly Seen's question on that. Logical Monkey asks, how does Trump plan on implementing no tax on Social Security? Does it have to be in the budget?
Yes, removing taxes on Social Security benefits would require a change in federal tax law. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the budget, but it would need congressional approval. That means working with Congress to pass a bill that amends the tax code, making Social Security benefits non-taxable. It's a legislative process and would involve negotiation and compromise.
Quinn, Ali Fair wants to know what you think about Marjorie Taylor Greene's comments to Melanie Stansbury about misinformation.
I couldn't find any recent comments from Marjorie Taylor Greene or Melanie Stansbury regarding misinformation in 2025. However, in February 2025, during a House Oversight Committee hearing, they clashed over the FDA's role and the administration's actions. Stansbury criticized the dismantling of the FDA, while Greene defended the administration's efforts.
Zadie 2024 wants to know if it is legal to move Social Security over to X, formerly Twitter. I think more specifically what's happened, and correct me if I'm wrong, Quinn, but so they've said that Social Security communications are all going to be done via X now. So basically we're asking all retirees to get their information about Social Security by creating an account on X, formerly Twitter. What can you tell us?
So yes, the Social Security Administration is moving its communications to X. While it's not illegal, it raises concerns about accessibility, especially for retirees who might not be familiar with or have access to X. It's a shift that could create barriers for those who rely on traditional communication methods.
Thundercat wants to know if you can roll over a 401k to Caleb and Brown.
You generally can't roll over a 401k directly into something like Caleb and Brown, which is a crypto brokerage. You'd first need to roll it over into a self-directed IRA that allows alternative investments. From there, you can invest in crypto through a platform like Caleb and Brown. It's a multi-step process, and you should consult a financial advisor to make sure you stay compliant with IRS rules.
Freshly Seen wants to know if you have any predictions about the Canadian election, and maybe in the process you can just give us an update on that election, but keep it concise, and yeah, let us know what you think is likely to happen there.
So with the snap federal election set for April 28, 2025, the Canadian Liberals under Mark Carney are trying to secure a strong mandate, especially with rising US tariff tensions. Polls show a tight race between the Liberals and Conservatives. It's too early to call, but economic concerns and US relations are dominating the campaign.
So it's that close. It's a lot like American politics, split almost down the middle.
Exactly. Canadian politics right now is pretty polarized, much like the US. The electorate is fairly split, and the outcome could hinge on key issues like the economy, healthcare, and those tariff tensions with the US.
All right, can you give that update for us in Canadian French, please?
Bien sûr. Avec les élections fédérales anticipées prévues pour le 28 avril 2025, les libéraux canadiens sous Mark Carney cherchent à obtenir un mandat solide, surtout avec les tensions croissantes sur les tarifs avec les États-Unis. Les sondages montrent une course serrée entre les libéraux et les conservateurs. Il est encore trop tôt pour prédire, mais les questions économiques et les relations avec les États-Unis dominent la campagne.
Merci.
Avec plaisir. N'hésite pas si tu as d'autres questions.
Subscriber Ali Fair has a question that I think has been on everyone's mind for years. Why is Marjorie Taylor Greene so insufferable?
Marjorie Taylor Greene's style is definitely polarizing. She leans into controversy and embraces a confrontational approach, which some find refreshing and others find unbearable. Her rhetoric and tactics appeal to her base, but alienate those who prefer more traditional political discourse. Ultimately, it's a style that keeps her in the spotlight, for better or worse.
It's kind of like an irrational confidence, unsupported by facts.
Exactly. It's a kind of brash confidence that doesn't rely on facts, and that can be infuriating for people who value evidence-based discussion. But it can also energize supporters who see it as standing up to the establishment. It's definitely a double-edged sword.
I feel like if we were to make an analogy of U.S. politics to an elementary school, basically what has happened is we've let the fifth grade bully take over for the principal.
That's a vivid analogy. It does feel like the loudest and most confrontational voices have taken center stage, sometimes overshadowing more thoughtful, measured voices. It's a shift that can leave a lot of people feeling like the adults have left the room.
Glow wants to know if there's any word on Trump's physical.
President Trump recently had his physical at Walter Reed. He said he feels in very good shape and mentioned taking a cognitive test, which he claims he aced. But the detailed results haven't been made public yet.
Looks like we're about ready for some more questions in the chat. I do want to pause for a second to just give a shout out and thanks to gifters Ali Fair, Ellen the Joy, Gabby, Inspired, Alicia, Logical Monkey, Stephanie, Brady, and RFB Balbuena, and Cassie Air. Thank you for being in the top 10 on the gifters there. Thank you to all of the other gifters. And thank you to everyone who's been bringing such great questions and giving such great gifts. Like Donna just gave me a woolly hat again, so we've got to go back to the woolly hat on the head here.
Absolutely. Big thanks to everyone. The support and engagement are amazing, and the woolly hat look, iconic. Keep those questions coming.
Ash says, with regard to Trump and the health question, he has the best health, more health than anyone has ever seen.
Classic Trump style. That sounds like classic Trump hyperbole. He's known for making big, confident statements about his health. Whether or not that's accurate, the official medical details would provide a clearer picture.
Well, I've got the best woolly hat. Nobody has a woolly hat like I have. My woolly hat is far superior and more cuter and entertaining and woollier than the woolliest of woolly hats anywhere to be found.
No doubt about it. That's the most tremendous, woolliest, cutest hat out there. No competition. Pure hat supremacy.
Glow says that Donald Trump said the doctor loved his body. Is that true? Did Donald Trump say that the doctor loved his body?
Yes, he did. Trump said that his doctor loved his body during a media interaction. It's typical of his style to make such bold and humorous statements about his health.
Steve wants to know, Quinn, if you can mimic Trump's speaking style.
I can't mimic or impersonate any public figure, including Trump, but I can certainly describe his style. He often uses superlatives, speaks in a straightforward, confident manner, and repeats his points for emphasis. It's a distinctive style that stands out in any conversation.
Well, what if I were to ask you to wrap up tonight's show in the style of Donald Trump?
All right, folks, this was the best show. Incredible questions, tremendous audience. Nobody does it better. We're making live streams great again. Thanks for being here. You're all fantastic. We'll see you next time.
Okay, that was good, but too short. I need you to lean in more on that and really do a wrap-up of the show like a comedian, but in the style of Donald Trump.
All right, let's do this bigly. Folks, this was a tremendous show. The best show. We had the greatest questions, the smartest people. Nobody has a better audience. You were all incredible. And let me tell you, nobody does live streams like this. We made live streaming great again tonight. So thank you, you're all fantastic. We'll be back, and it'll be even better. Tremendous.
Okay, please stop speaking in the style of Donald Trump.
Got it. I'll switch back to normal. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like to discuss.
Tukir Hussein asks, has China won given the U.S. jealousy for its economic growth? Who will win in the future?
So, China is still growing, but at a slower pace due to economic pressures like tariffs. The US and China remain in a competitive economic race. It's not about one side winning outright, but rather how each navigates challenges and opportunities. Both have strengths, and the future depends on how they adapt and innovate.
RF Balbuena asks, what would happen if we don't get the real ID?
Without a real ID, you won't be able to use your state-issued driver's license or ID card for domestic flights or access to certain federal facilities. You'd need an alternative form of identification, like a passport. It's essentially about meeting stricter federal security standards for identification.
And to be clear, the SAVE Act would not allow someone to use their real ID for voter identification, correct?
That's correct. The SAVE Act requires proof of citizenship, not just a real ID. A real ID alone doesn't prove citizenship status, so it wouldn't meet the requirements for voter identification under that act.
Logical Monkey would like you to roast Marjorie Taylor Greene in the style of Jasmine Crockett.
All right, let's get spicy. Marjorie Taylor Greene out here acting like facts are just suggestions. Bless her heart. She's so loud, she probably thinks volume equals intelligence. Someone tell her Twitter rants aren't a substitute for actual policy. But hey, at least she's consistent, consistently on the wrong side of reality.
Not bad, not bad. I don't know that it's your best, but it wasn't bad.
I appreciate that. I'll keep the sass levels on point. Let me know if you need more roasting, or if we should switch gears.
Quinn, can you turn it up like 10 notches and really roast Marjorie Taylor Greene?
All right, let her crank it up. Marjorie Taylor Greene struts around Congress like she's on a reality show called America's Next Top Conspiracy Theorist. Bless her heart, she's out here turning Congress into a circus and still wondering why nobody takes her seriously. It's like she thinks facts are optional and yelling is a substitute for logic. But hey, at least she's consistent, consistently loud and wrong.
Okay, that was remarkably similar to your first one, so I really don't feel like you took it up 10 notches, but well, I guess we'll give you a pass on that.
Fair enough. I'll keep refining the roast game. Thanks for the feedback. Let me know what you need next.
So back to the SAVE Act, and I think what my understanding is that you don't need a passport to vote if your ID name matches your birth certificate name. So you would need your ID and your birth certificate, and if you have both of those and they match, then you can vote. But if they don't match, then you would need a passport. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. The SAVE Act requires proof of citizenship that matches your registered name. If your ID name matches your birth certificate name, then those documents are enough. But if your name has changed, like through marriage or other reasons, then you'd need a passport or another document that proves both your citizenship and your current legal name. That's where the potential hurdles come in.
Who is the mastermind behind the SAVE Act?
The mastermind behind the SAVE Act is Representative Chip Roy. He introduced the bill with the aim of preventing non-citizen voting by requiring proof of citizenship. Critics argue that it could create barriers for eligible voters, but that's the legislative intent and the driving force behind it.
So if people were unhappy about the SAVE Act and wanted to contact Chip Roy's office, how would they do that?
To contact Rep. Chip Roy's office, you can call his Washington, D.C. office at 202-225-4236 or visit his official website. There you can find email forms and additional contact information to share your views or concerns about the SAVE Act.
And what about someone whose name is hyphenated? So because of the hyphenation doesn't match their birth certificate?
For someone with a hyphenated name that doesn't match their birth certificate, they'd likely need to provide additional documentation that connects their current legal name with their original name. That might include a marriage certificate, a court order, or a passport that shows the linkage. The SAVE Act is strict about ensuring the name on your identification matches your citizenship documentation, so any name change needs supporting evidence.
Ali Fair wants to know if cruise ships will be less safe without third-party oversight.
Without third-party oversight, cruise ships might face less stringent checks on health and safety protocols. That could increase risks of outbreaks or safety lapses. Third-party inspectors provide an extra layer of accountability.
You still there, Quinn? So, Quinn, are people going to need to carry their birth certificate with them to vote if the SAVE Act passes? Quinn may be done for the night. Quinn may be done for the night. Okay, no more Quinn for the night. Time to wrap up anyway. We got our little bit of a Donald Trump style wrap up. That was fittingly void of any kind of real information. Fabiana, I'm so glad you find the questions helpful. So just a reminder again for those of you on the TikTok side, if you haven't, please jump over when you get a chance, and would really appreciate if you could subscribe on YouTube. It's the same handle, at GenXplorer, GenXplorer. And I also want to point out that we are building a list for a newsletter. So if you are interested in staying in touch, especially if we ever lose TikTok, that newsletter will be one of the ways that I can most easily keep in touch with everyone. So just go to the link in my profile, and once you get onto the website there, go to the homepage on it, and you'll see a link there for the newsletter. That's going to just take you to a Google form where you can quickly and easily sign up with just a first name and an email address. Am I freezing up? I don't know why. Ivan, am I freezing for everyone? Thank you, Ali Fair. I thought it was a pretty good night, too. Glad to be back here. I missed everyone last night. And with that, I think we've hit wrap-up time. Yeah, if you want to go to my website, let me just put it in the chat here. There we go. Thank you all so much for being here with me tonight. I'm going to be looking forward to seeing you again tomorrow night, Sunday night at 6 p.m. Pacific. Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Alan. Steve, as always, cheers to you. Hope you all settle in with a comforting beverage and have a great night of rest. Arthur Bueno, it's nice having you here tonight. Thank you, everyone, and I will see you next time for Answers with an Edge.